Hi, everybody. It is so good to have you back here on the Treasured Wellness Show. I am super excited to introduce you to my guest today. Esther is a registered nurse. After 17 years in the ER, she just grew fed up with putting short-term band-aids, yep, on problems. So now she helps women very specifically with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. She helps them to find hope, healing, and energy without becoming overwhelmed. She is the host of the weekly Health with Hashimoto's podcast and creator of the Holistic Hashimoto's course. Esther Yunkin lives with her husband and their four boys in the beautiful state of Minnesota. I'm so happy to bring her on today. I love to bring other wellness professionals on the podcast who also love Jesus to help you really be your own best advocate for your health. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and help your audience improve their health in ways that are very simple.
Yeah, simple. We like simple. We like simple,
Yes.
doable, easy. So I'm curious, what are you treasuring in your season of life right now?
Well, right now is a season of being a taxi driver. So, with four boys, my oldest has his driver's license, but the others don't.
Mm.
And I was doing a story series for social media, and I was like, I don't just want to put that I'm a taxi driver. And so I decided for every single, trip, I'd put what I'm grateful for. And there are so many things to be grateful for as a taxi driver. Like, I'm grateful that my 14-year-old has a job that he can do. I'm grateful that my kids are volunteering at Vacation Bible School for
Mhm.
multiple churches. I'm just so grateful for all the reasons that I'm a taxi driver. And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you got to look for the good in some of those
Yeah.
seasons. And yeah, that's what I'm treasuring today.
I love that so much, and it just throws me back to the season of football and soccer and track and cross country and the horrible smell in the car with the clean and the the pads and everything. And it's like, I was just laughing with my son about 2 weeks ago about this specific day where I was taxi driver for like three other guys, teens after practice. And I don't know who started it, but they all ended up taking off their cleats. And I was like, who did that? Like, windows down. It was like,
No, oh no.
it was crazy. And we were laughing so hard about it. And he's like, yeah, I mean, of course, it was hot. He's like, I don't know which is worse, football or cross country, or soccer, because he did all three. So I'm like, it was just all bad.
Yes. Oh my
But cross
goodness, the stench. I
the
can't. I
stench.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, but you know what? I would never have wanted to be anywhere else at that time. So yeah, you hear a lot too. You glean a lot by being a taxi driver.
Yes. Yes, you do.
So I love that. Well, before we really dive into Hashimoto's and what that really is and all of the good details with that, what would you say, Esther, is the most significant thing that has happened to you in your life that has brought you to where you are now?
Probably the most significant thing was getting diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So backing up, I've always been holistic in my mindset. Freshman year of college, I remember writing a paper about how health is body, mind, and spirit, and you have to look at the whole picture. So I went through 4 years of nursing school, went into Western medicine, and like you said in the bio, I was in Western medicine in the ER for 17 years. And you get so tired of just seeing the same things, even the same people come back in and not truly helping them. So I went back to school for holistic health education, specifically. The program was for nurses. And then when I left the ER, I was like, well, obviously everybody needs me. So I'm going to have this long line of people waiting for my help. And that's not how it happened. And then when I got my own diagnosis of Hashimoto's, I was very worried. I told God before the labs came back, I'm like, this cannot be my thyroid, God, because I do not understand thyroid stuff. I understand everything else. Somebody could stop me on the street and ask me about anything medical, and I can tell you body, mind, spirit, diet, environment, how everything works together, what it is, what you could do, but not thyroid. So I told God this, it can't be my thyroid. And of course it was. And I heard God at that moment tell me, Esther, with all of your experience, your 4 years of nursing school, your 17 years in the ER, your 2 years of holistic education, and you still don't understand thyroid stuff, what do you think the average woman is going through? Use your gifts and talents to help others. And that was the turning point. It was like, okay, thank you. I will use this to help others to serve. That was the one moment.
I love that because there's always a pivotal moment for especially for those of us that did work in conventional and then went the holistic functional route just because I believe it was deeply ingrained in who we are, who God created us to be, and how He created us to serve. So I love that. That's so good. And you're right. And so that's exactly why we are going to dig in right now. We're going to talk about the thyroid. We're going to talk about hyperthyroid, hypothyroid, and then of course, I want you to talk about Hashimoto's. So could you just review hyper and hypothyroid briefly, and then even then you can segue into Hashimoto's as an autoimmune disease because I really don't think many women know about Hashimoto's, and so feel free to get right into the root causes of it and why women are more susceptible to Hashi's developing it, especially over 40, is what I'm seeing.
Yep. Yeah. One statistic I read said about 90% of women over 40 have hypothyroid, and the majority of them have Hashimoto's. But not everybody has been diagnosed with hypothyroid, and everybody who is diagnosed with hypothyroid has not been checked for Hashimoto's. So, backing up, what is your thyroid? So, it's a little butterfly shaped gland at the base of your neck, and it produces a hormone, specifically T4. And that is it's like the key blank when you go to a hardware store and you're going to get a key made, T4 that your thyroid produces is like that blank. And then your liver converts it to the real key, which is T3. Now, that key goes into every single cell in your body and it's like the ignition switch, it turns it on. And of course, for every single thing in your body to work, you need healthy working cells. So, a lack of that key is going to cause slowing down of different things, and that is classic hypothyroid, is things slowing down because they don't have the ignition key. So in your brain you're going to have brain fog or depression. One thing that people don't know is if you are depressed, it is the standard of care, it doesn't always happen, but it is the standard of care that you are checked for your thyroid because it is the most common reason for depression, and antidepressants are not going to fix your thyroid. So people with depression need to be checked. Other symptoms, your metabolism slowing down, which means you're putting on weight, you're doing everything the same and you can't lose weight. Slowing down in your gut means constipation, means things just sitting there. Slowing down in your hair, skin, and nails means things are like your hair is thinning, your eyebrows are the outer third is like not there anymore, your nails are thin and brittle. There's so many different things, but if you think about, is this a slowing down of this system? If the answer is yes, it might be hypothyroid. Now, hyperthyroid is your body is producing too much. So there's too many ignition keys. And so things are revving up. And so instead of depression, you're going to have more anxiety. Your heart, you might feel palpitations. Those are the two most common complaints that I hear for hyperthyroid, but there's other things like you're getting like your body temperature is just way high. I'm not talking hot flashes.
Mm-mm.
Those do happen, but in hyperthyroid, like you're just sweating, your body temperature is too high. And hyperthyroid can cause very, very big problems medically, and you might have to go to the ER and actually, have that stopped because it can cause even death. It's not as common, but it does happen. I just want your listeners to be aware. So that's hypothyroid and hyperthyroid. Now, Hashimoto's is your immune system got overwhelmed. Your immune system, one analogy that I really like, I'm not sure about your audience, it's like a security guard and he has a gun. I know guns are not all good, but the security guard is way overstressed and he's jumpy. He's just always looking for alert, and something happens and he like pulls his gun on the wrong thing because of his stress level, because he was too jumpy. That's your immune system and with an autoimmune problem. It's too jumpy. It's pulling the gun on the wrong thing. And so all of your autoimmune problems are that in nature. And then the name comes from where your body is attacking. And so in Hashimoto's, it's attacking your thyroid. The problem is with Hashimoto's, because your thyroid is being attacked, some of it is going to die. And when it dies, it's going to release extra thyroid. And so you can have hypo symptoms, you can have hyper symptoms, you can have both of them together. And
Mhm.
people are like, well, clearly this is not hypothyroid because I have these hyperthyroid symptoms. So it can be very, very confusing. On average, before somebody gets a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, they have waited 4 different years looking for answers, and they have seen at least 4 different providers before they finally get that answer. And like
I
I
believe
said,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because you can be
yep,
2/3 of the way sick. Most people are 2/3 of the way sick before a diagnosis is even made.
yep,
And to your point, women are, because it's predominantly more in women, we're going to get into that, but um, swinging, you're swinging between high and low, hyper, hypo, and then your body inadvertently settles on low.
yep, yes. Yeah. And then when you go to the doctor, they just check your TSH. They're like, oh, your thyroid is a little low. They don't check the whole panel. And
No.
then I hear from so many women, they're like, my doctor just said, here's some Synthroid or levothyroxine. You'll be on it for the rest of your life. There's nothing you can do. Come back in a little while. We'll check your labs. And I'm like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah, no
no.
hope. There's no hope. They're
Right.
just chasing the numbers too. They're not even really looking at your symptoms. Or you'll get a doctor that says, I don't chase the numbers. I want to focus on your symptoms." But then they don't hear what the woman is saying, and then so doesn't order correctly or just refuses to order a full thyroid panel. So,
Right.
I mean, I definitely want you to talk about that because as you and I both know, our medical system is gravely flawed, very broken. So, talk to that woman who does the right thing. She goes to her doctor, she asks for blood work based off of her symptoms. The labs come back normal, and yet she clearly doesn't feel great. And aside from the fact that, like you just said, she didn't get proper, complete thyroid testing, what steps can she take right now? Or maybe if you want to even go into what labs she should ask for. And then that's a whole other, because she can ask, but it might not happen. And I help my clients all the time order their own labs online because of that reason,
Yep.
because they're told no. So why don't you dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, you're in charge of your medical care. Like you own your body. Your doctor, your insurance company does not own your body. And so you should also be in charge of your own medical care. And, we all know that the medical system is broken. Insurance companies dictate to the doctors what they can and cannot do. It's so broken. So the first thing I tell people, actually, I just sent a message to somebody about 10 minutes ago. She said, oh, my labs came back and the doctor said they were all normal. Like, okay, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do, because her and I don't have a big relationship, like this was somebody else brought her to me and said, what do you think? So I asked her, have you put your labs into AI? And some people don't like AI. I think that as it's growing, it's such a good tool. And so I will now drop labs into the latest AI. When somebody listens to this episode, it could be tomorrow and AI might be different from today. It's always evolving, but you can drop it in and say something like, these are my most recent labs using functional medicine standards. Please let me know what I should know about my labs. And AI is going to tell you more than your doctor, usually, because they're looking at it from what you told it. You want functional medicine ranges, which are more narrow than conventional. And that is because when they initially figured out what a normal was, a bulk of their population that's composing this normal was a sick. So the normal is sick. And I don't accept normal. I don't accept sick as normal. So that's one thing that people can do is just drop their stuff into AI. Not everybody likes AI. And if you don't want to do that, that's awesome. Totally fine. You can also Google it and say, okay, what are the functional medicine ranges? I did this when I was first learning. I had everything written down. I had a table that I put all of the labs into. Okay, what is this? Is this normal? Is this upper normal? Is this, to try to figure out what is going on because you are in charge. And then as far as your doctor not ordering, you are absolutely right. Sometimes insurance companies tell a doctor no. Sometimes a doctor will decide that they don't want a patient to advocate for themselves. And then they just get a little attitude and they're like, no, if you told me not to, or if you told me to do that, I'm not going to do it, because doctors are human and not all of them are like that. A lot of them really, really want to help. But occasionally you'll run into that doctor who's like, I'm going to do what I want to do, not what you want to do. And so I'm so grateful that we have independent lab testing and you can order a panel and you can look. So you asked like which labs to do. I always want to know how much thyroid your thyroid is producing. So that T4. I always want to know what's converted. When your liver is converting that blank key to the real key, sometimes your body is so wise. God has given your body so much wisdom. Your body's like, nope, we don't need gas right now. We don't need an ignition switch. You need to rest. You need to slow down. You need to sleep more because that's when your body heals. So we're not going to give you more ignition keys. We're going to give you some breaks, actually. And that's reverse T3. I always want to know that number because if that number is elevated, you know that your body's telling you, please rest. And it's your job to listen. In America, we don't want to listen. We just want to go, go, go. If I don't
Yep.
have enough go, go, go of my own, I'm going to get caffeine. I'm going to get another stimulant. You have to listen. So if your reverse T3 is high, you need to rest. And so I always want that one. That one is not usually in a standard thyroid panel. And then, of
No.
course, in the panel that I want the antibodies. There's two
Yes.
different ones, TG and TPO. I want to
Yep.
know those. Yeah, we want to get a good picture of what's going on.
I love that. And I'm smiling because I literally had somebody tell me that their doctor, after they asked for a complete thyroid panel that, I give my clients, um, the doctor said, no, we don't do a reverse T3 unless you're in the hospital. That's the only place they do it. And I'm like, really? Because I do this on myself all the time. And I've done it for countless of clients. So it's just to your little snippy attitude point earlier, we get that sometimes, right? And that's why, I encourage my clients and the listeners on the podcast to be your own best advocate. Walk in with notes, walk in with all the emotion out of it. Even if you've been crying on the way to the appointment, just dry your tears, uh, straighten your crown, like they say, you're a daughter of the king, and just walk in there and be factual. Like, these are the facts. I've been tracking this, I've been tracking that. This is how my sleep is. I'm constantly freezing, blah, 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 all this stuff. And don't take it's your age for an answer. Don't take, oh, welcome to menopause. Don't take these pat answers as truth over you and your situation. So, yeah, I love that. We have to fight, we have to advocate for ourselves. So, you've reviewed some symptoms that women may be experiencing with their thyroid. Um, do you want to elaborate on that? Do you have anything else you want to elaborate on with that?
I think I would say, just as an overview, if you're feeling like something's wrong, dig into it. Because thyroid affects every single cell in your body, it's going to feel different for everybody. Your symptoms are probably not going to be identical to somebody else who could have the exact same labs as you. Like, you are an individual, body, mind, and spirit. You are unique. And so I would say just trust that intuition that God has given you. And if you know that something's not right, keep digging until you figure it out, because sick might be common, but it is not normal. Tired might be common, but it is not normal. It is not how God created us. And yes, there are consequences of the sin and the fall. We live with that, but you don't
Right.
have to accept that you're just going to be sick and tired.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always hope. I mean, there's always hope, no matter if you've had that diagnosis or if you're still in the process of, your doctor kicking the lab test can down the road and like just prolonging a diagnosis. We don't want a diagnosis. We want to get to the root cause of disease before it turns into disease. But even then, there's always hope. There's always hope in God's kingdom. So, absolutely, there's always something that you can do. And there's a lot of natural things that you can do to support your thyroid. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah. So I look at root causes, and I know you do medicine or labs, and I love labs because they can tell you so much stuff. Like, as you've said before on the podcast, is it test, don't guess. Is that what you say?
Right, but we
Yes.
also don't want to overtest
Right. Right.
because
So,
some
yeah.
functional doctors tend to overtest and it's
Oh, yeah.
expensive.
It is. So I start out with common sense. I start out with before we even go to the testing, let's look at, what are the most common root causes? Well, every single autoimmune condition has three things in common. You have a genetic component, you have a gut component, and you have one or more triggers. So let's look at like your gut. Are you pooping every day? If you're not pooping every day, you have gut problems. If you're not pooping at least once a day, um,
Right.
and there are things you can do on the gut health front, so many things you can do. And then when you're looking at those triggers, one of the biggest triggers is stress. So, how are you managing stress? And stress doesn't have to be like what you immediately think of with stress. Stress can be other things. I live in Minnesota. It's cold in the winter, and that is one of my biggest stressors. Every single winter, I have a flare up. And I was talking to somebody a little while ago, and I could tell she was trying to sell me something. And like her cure would obviously, fix all of my stressors. And I was like, actually, cold. I live in Minnesota, and that's one of them. And it's like she didn't even know what to say. But I bought a sauna because
Yeah.
yes, I live in Minnesota,
Yes.
but I'm going to warm up. And so there's always things you can do. So stress is huge. And that is something that you can pretty much guarantee is one of your root causes. So, how are you lowering your stress? How are you dealing with the stress that you have? How are you doing and giving that to God? Are you focusing on gratitudes every day? All of those things impact your stress level. There's like 8 really common um, triggers that I go through. And one of them is chlorine and fluorine. If you look at the periodic table of elements, they are in the same column as iodine, and your thyroid
Mhm.
needs iodine in order
Yes.
to function. So chlorine and fluoride, chloride, chlorine, fluoride, fluorine, it's all the same. Not really. It's all similar. um,
Similar molecular structure.
Right, right. So when you're chopping for toothpaste, like get one without fluoride in it. When
Yes.
you're looking at your water, take out the chlorine. Like there are simple things that you can do
Yes.
to address those common triggers and you don't have to do a lot of testing and you don't have to do waiting to figure that out. You could say, oh, this is a common root cause. This is a common trigger. I know that I've had, fluoride in my toothpaste forever and ever. Let's get one without fluoride. It's a simple swap that you can do that impacts your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, fortunately with, Make America Healthy Again and all of that, like that is bringing more awareness to these things that you and I have been talking about for decades. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, it's wonderful because it needs to be everywhere. It needs to be mainstream. It needs to be everywhere. That people are understanding that there are these very, very specific uh, toxins in our food, air, and water supply. And so, yeah, chlorine big, fluoride big, and iodine. That's the other thing that I have found that most practitioners do not order an iodine. Even if you have been on thyroid medication for 20 years, they're never checking your iodine. And this is my statistic. Don't quote me on this, but like 9 times out of 10, you're very deficient in iodine if you have Hashimoto's or a thyroid problem. So it it's important to check that. I mean, we need to boost the iodine levels, but you have to be careful with it. You can't just like start taking any old supplement and, treat that yourself. So you got to be
Right.
very wise with that and discerning. So,
Yeah, iodine is one of like the biggest controversial things in thyroid and Hashimoto's. There's so much research saying that we need more, and there's so much research saying that we need less. And both sides are so well done, like
yeah,
really good research on both sides.
yeah.
So, yeah, that is a spot where test and then figure out yourself. Like, ran a N of one experiment on myself. So, N of one means there's one person in the experiment. It was me. And I did that extra iodine because I've heard that if you go over a certain amount a day, it can send you into a Hashimoto's flare. And it did for me. I was just doing a tiny bit over that minimum amount,
Mm,
and it sent me into a flare up. And I was like, okay, well, I know for myself at this time, I can't do that. And it's
right.
good to know how you are going to respond.
Absolutely. Everybody needs to know that. And that's another puzzle piece of being your own best advocate. So really quickly before we close, will you explain what a flare feels like for the woman that has no idea what this even looks like, sounds like, or feels like?
Yes, this was one thing where I felt so stupid when I had Hashimoto's because I was like, everybody talks about like a flare, like it's common knowledge, but I don't know what that is. What is a flare
Right,
up?
right.
And well, then when I Googled it and when I dug into it, I was like, oh, of course, it's just your symptoms getting worse. And so you think of a bonfire, and the bonfire is at its steady height, and then you throw an extra log on and it flares up. So whatever your symptoms get worse. But like I said, for every single person, your symptoms can be different from somebody
Right.
else. So there's no standard like flare up, like how you're going to feel. It's going to feel worse. And sometimes that flare up calms down. And sometimes that flare up becomes a new normal. And so you need to be tracking your symptoms. You need
Yes.
to be writing down how you feel because we tend to forget. We say that we're always going to remember, but we tend to forget.
Right. We do because we're so busy. Life goes on, right? We do, and we focus on our kids or, our service, our ministry, our business. We just keep going. We just keep
Yep.
trucking. It's what we've always done. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Everybody's flare can be different. I just went through a flare a couple of months ago and it was like, oh, here we go. But when you catch it early, and so for me, it's like extreme exhaustion, joint pain, my skin hurts. Like it's almost like an Epstein Barr flare up, right? Just
Yeah.
and it's not always like that because sometimes a migraine comes with it or heart palpitations. Like it's not always the same, but when you track, you're able to recognize quicker the next time a flare up comes up, whether that's Hashimoto's or hypothyroid.
Yep.
So it's so important. This has been such a great conversation. It's so rich, isn't it, Esther? There's like so much we could dig into. We could talk for another 40 minutes, but I really appreciate you sharing your story personally about Hashimoto's and this giving some great insight for the ladies listening about the thyroid and all of your experience with that. Would you leave our listeners with just some encouragement, a treasured truth?
Yeah. I want you listening to know that there's always hope. There's always something you can do. And quite honestly, there's always 1,000 things to do. So only pick one, just
Yep.
one at a time. Focus on what is next. What's the one step in front of you? Because there is hope. You can feel better. You can take so many actions, and
Hmm.
you get to pick what you have bandwidth for. You get to pick what you're going to focus on today. You have that agency, and I just want you to step into that. You're not a victim. You are made in the image of God. You are loved by God, and God has a plan for you.
I love it. Beautifully said. So great. How can my audience find you?
They're already listening to this podcast, so they could just switch over in their podcast player to the Health with Hashimoto's podcast. That's the easiest place to find me. I am on YouTube, so those who are watching, you can find my YouTube channel. I do not do as much over there, but I am there.
Awesome. Wonderful. Great. And I will have all the links down in the description. So again, thank you so much for your time, Esther, sharing your story, just giving your insight, your experience, and your expert expert insight into this really important topic that's I don't think talked about enough. So thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.